Hello out there in Guitar Modern land. A couple of years ago, I was gobsmacked when I got an email from Andy Summers' publicist saying he would like to be interviewed by me for Guitar Modern. That's when he brought out his Metal Dog record, which was a truly modern guitar record, a lot of noise, a lot of interesting sounds, but beautifully put together. Very unusual for him. And Guitar Modern was exactly the right place for him to be at that point. We spoke on the phone back then, and we talked about a lot of stuff. He's into photography, and I was just getting into photography, and I was curious about how the two things intersected in his life. Since then, I've gotten a lot more serious about photography, and it was great to talk to him about that as well this time. But he also has a new book out that's hilarious and will be uh, have stories in it that are instantly recognizable to most musicians. Just the attitude, the situations. Of course, they're exaggerated for comic effect, but it's like Spinal Tap. Obviously, Spinal Tap was a comedy, but any musician I know that watched Spinal Tap thought, that's my life there. And you will see your life in his book as well. And if you're not, well, if you're not a musician, you're probably not watching this. But even people who are not musicians, I think, can enjoy it. So we talked about the book some. And he has a new record out that started life as a concept for music for a photography show that he was putting on, I believe, in France. And so we talked about that as well. It was just great to talk to him and in person, such as Zoom is. And I think you'll enjoy the interview. Please, as always, go to the website, click through to my sponsors, Red Panda and Earthquaker. Earthquaker has a new pedal out, and Red Panda, I think, is finally shipping the new version of the Rasta. So check all that stuff out. And now sit back and enjoy my interview with Andy Summers. Are you familiar with the site Guitar Modern? You look,
Yeah,
you look fabulous, darling.
well, I'm trying to hang in there, what's left of it. Not much.
Yeah, I don't know if you. I mean, we've talked before about
Yeah.
back in the first album of the trilogy you did, and we just spoke by phone, I think. But lately, I've been doing video interviews. I just did John McLaughlin, and
Oh,
I've done Bill Frisell, and people seem to love videos. I mean, I
what
don't
are
know
you
if
going to do? Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it's COVID or they're they just have
Yeah. Well, it does give you some sort of social life, I suppose, apart from, not being able to hang out in a crowd anymore.
yeah.
The days are over for the time being.
Yeah, what have you been up to during?
Well,
I mean,
I'm
other than
working
the
on
record.
many projects. Well, I'm trying to make another film. And what I seem to be slightly obsessed with at the moment, and I've done five of them, is I'm making videos for each of the tracks of this new album, making them from still photographs, um, with all sorts of techniques employed, morphing and twisting and blah, 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 blah. And my assistants become very good at, Final Cut Pro. Anyway, we have a little whole methodology that we worked out, and they're actually, I don't know if you've seen any of them.
Yeah, they look fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm doing that, and I'm a bit sort of, into it, I suppose. And in fact, I'm going to go and shoot one this afternoon. I've just remembered this place in LA. It's all sort of wetlands and reeds and thing. And I think later on this afternoon it's going to be beautiful in there because it's a very sunny day. That kind of thing. I'm going to try and do something weird down there. I've just got the iPhone 13 with its cinematic mode, which is fabulous, actually. So we're just going to go and dick around this afternoon for an hour.
Cool. So as I mean, there's so many areas we need to get into, but I mean, you
Yeah,
are a photographer. So are
yeah.
you doing, I mean, if you're appearing in the video, are you just kind of directing it
I
and
direct it. Yeah. I mean, well, first off, I'm going to this place, these Bayona wetlands, I'm going to shoot it myself. In fact, I'm going to take my Leica and I'll just do some photography, but then I'll try and shoot it different ways with the new wonderful iPhone 13. And then in these videos, I make sort of a minimal appearance. So at least there's me somehow and a bit of guitar, so we're not completely remote. So I'll think about, trying to direct him to shoot me at the end. It's all sort of, yeah, we just do it between us, but the level has gotten better and better all the time. It's fun to do. It's very addictive. It's sort of akin to recording tracks and that, because we have to build these things up, and make a lot of sort of artistic decisions about the flow of the still photography. What's exciting now with this new cinematic mode on the iPhone, I can add video into it as well. So anyway, it's definitely a creative process, and it's quite enjoyable.
Sure. I mean, and that's one thing. We talked a little bit about the connection between photography and music the last time we spoke. But
Yes.
since then, I've gotten way more serious about photography. I mean, I don't
Hey,
see there's the Leica sitting back there among the guitar
good
pedals.
for you.
And yeah, well, we have a mutual friend, Ralph Gibson.
Oh, one of my closest friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would hesitate to call him friend. We're friendly because he's a Guitar Moderne fan. He's a fan of the
Yeah.
site. He's a
Yeah.
guitar player.
It may have been Ralph that turned me onto your site and Guitar Moderne in the first place. I think it was actually.
Oh, that's lovely of him, and yeah, he's
Yeah.
lovely. Um, so I was going to talk about the what I was going to say is, so what strings do you use? Was going to be my first question.
You've read the book, obviously.
Yeah, well, I also know the
Ah,
gentleman who did that interview that incurred your wrath and probably inspired the story.
well,
Uh,
yeah.
but what I wanted to ask you about the stories, they're very enjoyable. They're
Thank you.
fictional, and Fretted and Moaning is the name of the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And they center around guitar, but they cover a wide range of genres and
Yeah.
tiers of guitarists, I
Yeah.
mean, and is it mostly from experience and observation?
Yeah. There's some of it that's completely made up and fictional, but because I've lived this life, of being a guitarist all my life, and so I've been through thousands of situations. And when as I started to think about it, these little sort of seeds would come up, memories, crazy stuff, in theaters and dressing rooms, being on the road, being in a van, whatever, anything to do with, with the life. And I would use those memories as a sort of a starting point to, sort of start fictionalizing it out. So it's really based on a lot of things that I've gone through, not exactly, but of course I'm sort of subsumed by that life, if you like. So it's kind of in me.
Well, sure, and you have an extensive experience in it in a way that some players don't. I mean, you didn't go from being a teenager guitar playing in a band to being discovered and being, the next big thing. I mean, you
Mm.
started as a serious player. You played
Yeah.
with people like the New Animals, which would have,
Yeah.
probably exposed you to that particular era of
Mhm.
rock
Yes.
mayhem, and and each era
Yeah.
has its own. But
Yeah.
you, with the Police, I guess you were around the punk thing,
Yeah.
so you got to experience that, and it's terrific because it makes the book so varied and informs all the different crazy characters that you've
Yeah.
come up with.
Yeah. Like even the punk one, which was kind of fun to write, and based on, well, you know the story about the guy who's secretly a prog fan, but he's sort of vehement punk in his journalism.
I know.
Yeah, double standard.
Had you met someone like that?
Oh yeah, they were around in London at the time, particularly with the newspaper called the NME, and we always called it the enemy, but the New Musical Express, full of those sort of guys. If you weren't punk, you should just be dead. As far as they were concerned. So, but meanwhile, prog fans in the closet, if you like.
Right, they'd go home and listen to their Genesis records and then write
Exactly.
about that.
Yeah.
Um, the red guitar, that story was interesting.
Mm.
Was I didn't I Ralph sent me this a long time ago.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And I was going back over it in preparation for our interview, and I noticed
Mm.
that story appears in here.
Yeah, I caught that myself because I had it, and somewhere in there I thought, oh yeah, that one. And of course I'd sort of forgotten that it had been in that. And you're the first person that's picked up on that. And I slightly wondered, ooh, am I allowed to do this? Ooh, a Chronicle book's going to come after me. But actually, I know the owner of Chronicle Books, actually, because we did that with him. And another friend, close friend of mine, is very close friends with the guy who's the owner of it. So no problem. But yeah, I did feel slightly weird about that. But I like the story well enough, and I thought it's a little different than the other ones. I'm
And
not
it
that
fit.
young girl somewhere in Brazil or whatever.
Yeah, it fits perfectly in and amongst it. And was that the first thing like that you wrote, or were there other stories you were writing around the time?
Well, yeah, that one's a few years old, obviously, because of the light strings. I think I did write it actually for that. But, I'm always having to write. It's a sort of constant. Obviously, I wrote the autobiography, and that was very successful. But I'm writing all the time. And, I've got kind of a film script going at the moment and a couple of other things. This book, Fretted Moaning, has done well so far. It's encouraging, but it sort of slightly puts the pressure. Well, I've got to do another one. I don't know if I could do that whole guitar thing again, but no, I like to write, and short stories like that. Maybe I'm thinking along the lines of maybe, all right, I could do another book. I've got it going now. I could do something like, in one book, 3 novellas or something. Uh,
Oh, that
yeah, well, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it all the time, actually.
Well, fortunately, the book world, unless you're like Lee Childs or something like that, is not like the record world where you're on a book a year thing.
No,
I mean,
it's incredibly difficult. It's probably the one industry that is really on is on the floor. It's very difficult. I mean, I went around with agents and all that, and I did finally get someone to do this. You would think, with the name and the history that I have, it should be just a walk in anywhere you like. It's not. It's very difficult.
that's
And this book has sold well and still selling well. So they kind of missed out, actually. I was a bit surprised by that. But it seems to be, one worse than the record industry, if you like, at the moment.
that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, like the record industry, a book tour is probably out at the moment.
Yeah, I don't really see doing that. Yeah, of course, for the most obvious pandemic reason. Yeah.
Well, looking at Light Strings, and knowing your relationship with Ralph, I mean, that book and your book, the new book, both of you have this connection with the sensuality of the guitar,
Yeah.
and as both an object of desire and as something that creates desire in others, and would you
Yes.
agree?
Yes, I think it's potent, if you like. And, you can make all that sort of, it's about its sort of design, shaped like a woman, blah, 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 whatever. Some of them are a bit crude to mention here, but yes, it's a very sensual instrument. I think in all, you don't see guys with trombones under balconies in Renaissance Italy. It's always the stringed instrument, right?
Sure. Well, yeah, but I mean, I was impressed in the book by the stories in the new book. The stories really confront that. I mean, everybody that gets interviewed. I don't know if it's still true of young players. I think young players are inspired just by looking at YouTube and seeing shredders on YouTube, and
Yeah,
they're inspired way before they're even interested in girls. But I mean, in my generation, which is closer to your
yeah,
generation, everybody picked up the guitar because it was a way to pull
yeah.
women. I mean, we were all
Well, that's true. No, I wouldn't take that out of the equation. It wasn't the reason I got started. I mean, I just, my magical moment was when one was given to me at about the age of 11, and the world disappeared. That was it for me. My path was set, and I feel very fortunate for that. But of course, as you go on and teenage years come about and the body starts changing, I guess you sense those things. Because even at school, I know that the guitar was definitely an attractor. I had girls would follow me home, I'm the kid with a guitar, Um, I think it's probably actually a sexual instrument more than most, because you hold it, you've got it in your hands, it's warm, and you can project from it. I mean, and of course, the modern electric guitar has got so much power and might. I see why, young guys get so excited about it, being in a heavy metal band or something. It's sort of like going to war.
Well,
Uh,
it's interesting. Have you read Mark Ribot's book? He just came out.
I have.
You know,
I
eh,
have just read it actually a couple of weeks ago. I got his book and I got John Lurie's book. The Mark book, he's a very bright guy. It's very angry, and he's a very just well, his music's kind of angry. I have some of his CDs because he's definitely an interesting cat, and he's probably great. One thing that I heard that really, oh God, that's it. He said somewhere that he's left-handed. His dominant hand is left hand, and he's always played the other way around, which has always limited him. I mean, I've never thought of him as being limited, but he's not like a raging virtuoso lead player. He sort of does other stuff, but he's very interesting. He sort of carved his own space with it. And I like the book. I thought there was some, it's quite a mix, and I like the very brutal short stories and some of the stuff he did. And I like the way he documented, like a diary, his journey around Europe, which sounds absolutely brutal. And he's kind of a different guy.
well, I just brought it up
Um,
because he
I
has
thought,
that chapter about playing loud. Where the
God,
power of
how
playing.
can you stand it, man? Don't you have like you? Can you hear anything anymore if you play that loud? Not me. I mean, I'm always protecting the ears. I mean, lucky that my hearing is good, but I do have tinnitus. It just kill me, but I don't want to make it any worse.
Did
Have you
you?
read John Lurie's book?
No, I just read about it, and I want to get a
I
hold
can
of it.
recommend it. It's another. I mean, it's all over the place, but it's very funny. And if you want to know about New York at that period, that's the book to read.
Yeah,
And of course, Mark Ribot was in his band, and then finally threw a
exactly.
hissy fit and left all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, I lived in New York during that period,
Mm,
so
mm.
I love reading books that talk about it because, and
Yeah.
also I just watched this documentary about everything street. Have you seen that about street photography? It's about
No.
street photography, but it's really about during the period that I lived in New York, the 70s, during that crazy graffiti period. So it's really gives a
I've,
sense of,
I've definitely watched that. Yeah.
yeah, it talks about, the people like Meyerowitz and Winograd.
Yeah, all those guys. Have you
Um,
seen the Gary Winogrand one? That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, I thought I've watched that twice. I thought it was so beautifully made, whether you like photography or not. It's just such a great doc of that period in that early 60s in New York. Yeah.
There's a comic sensibility in the book that struck
Yeah.
me. It felt kind of like an updated S.J. Perlman. So
Well, thank you. The idea of the book was that it was funny. It was supposed to be a funny book, not like, oh. I mean, the first story is ridiculous. I mean, most of them are, Django and Picasso. I mean, all these things I put in there. It was supposed to be a funny book. That's the idea of it. So thanks.
Well, that's what reminded me of Perlman is the kind of, artistic references and
Yeah,
just pulling. I mean, that's partly what makes it funny is pulling these oddball references out of thin air.
yeah,
The
yeah,
juxtaposition makes it really
yeah.
work well. Well, just one last question before we move on to the album, which is,
Mm.
what pen did you use? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I use a swan quill.
So talking about the record, according to the press, it's called Harmonics of the Night, and
Mm.
it was inspired because you created music for a photography
That
exhibit.
was really, I mean, that's completely true. That's not some piece of fancy talk. I was lucky enough to get this huge retrospective show in France, in Montpellier, which is towards the south. And I happened to be in France. I don't even know why I was there, but I was there. And so this was like in a sort of October or November. The show was going to be in the following late February. So I was able to go down there and look at this museum. It's a beautiful 18th century building, and Montpellier is a beautiful city. And sort of scope it out and walk around. And as I walked around it, it's the first time I thought, I should do some really this time do some music to go with the exhibit. There's a 400 photographs. And I came back to, because normally I forget all about that, and you get some like shitty transistor radio playing crap, while your artistic works are on the wall. It's very irritating. So this time I thought, okay, I've got the time to do this. And I got back to LA and I had just received from, what are they called? Danish guitar pedals, TCI or something.
TC Electronic.
Yeah. They sent me a pedal, little pink pedal, and it did this intervallic thing on it. And I plugged it in. I was in the studio, we were messing around doing stuff. And I thought, oh my God, this sound is great. It's inspiring. I said, it's like literally run the tape. I'm ready, and I went into that improvisation, which is the first track called A Certain Strangeness. And that was it. It was a 20-minute improv. And from there, it kind of inspired the rest of the album. I thought, okay, this is the starting point because I was wondering what to do kind of after the last two. And this is it. This is setting the atmosphere. And it sort of proceeded from there. And I did that music, that first track ran, as a 20-minute loop the whole time the exhibit was on in France and then in Holland, actually. So I got quite a lot out of that. Yeah.
Did you edit it down to 11 minutes for the record?
No, yeah, what I did in the end, it was actually almost 20 minutes long. Well, I'm just standing like, for the program on the CD, I thought, I don't know if it's too long for the first track. So I actually did divide it. I did, exactly right. I divided it in half somewhere in the middle and called the second one Strange Return.
Oh, right.
I just like the way it sort of, tops and tails the CD. Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, it's funny. I love the music. Interesting. I find it really perfect to edit photos too.
Wow, thanks. Yeah.
It inspires the kind of texture
Yeah.
that I like to imbue in
Yeah.
my own images, the mood.
Yeah.
And I was oh yeah. So how did you go about doing the recording? Did you put down kind of beds and then play over them?
Yeah. I'm trying to think how I did this one because it's all me. There's no one else involved. I'd have, and these were not like, there's two processes for me. One is it like, I sit at home and I got a little, I call it the casita at the end of my big garden, and I sit there with a Zoom recorder and trying to work things up, and then I've got millions of pieces of music. This one, I think I pretty much did it all in the studio with finding things with pedals and stuff that would kind of inspire something. So I didn't just go into any sort of standard harmonic progressions, but that the attitude of the track would be sort of indicated by a very fresh sound, like a combination of pedals or whatever it was that would get me into a kind of a headspace. And I go, okay, that makes me want to play this, and I would go into something and then try and my usual methodology is I would put down, say, okay, I'm feeling, like 1, 2, give me a click, give me like 16 bars or 32 bars of a click. And then once I've got the sound that I feel is fresh and doesn't sound like anybody else, I'll start laying something down, whether it's a harmonic progression or a set of fairly atonal chords, but that it will have a shape, and it might be very simple as, like a set of kind of atonal chords for 2 sections of an A, then a little B relief, and, where you might change the rhythm up ultimately. And so I'd sort of proceed like that. They're sort of improvised and sort of composed. And I'm kind of working towards a place with them where I feel, okay, that's it. It's perfect. That's it. Now I'm there. Some of them, like the Harmonics of the Night track itself. Hang on, where's the CD? Can't even see it. Everything's a mess. I would work them through, and sometimes they didn't always work first time, obviously, and they take some time. Then I would add textures, either from pedals or whatever was around in the studio until, they came to a place. Harmonics of the Night, that actual track is, quite composed. It's hard to explain because some of it just happens, I just suddenly stumble upon a sound. I go, oh, that's the way to end this thing. It's very much being in the studio mind headset and into your playing. When I do those albums like this. I'm very much living in that space for as long as it takes. I mean, it took me a while to put this one together because it's quite complex. There's so many textures and layers and stuff, and then ultimately, you probably play the guitar solo at the end over the top of that. And when I get around to that section of it, I play a lot, so that I feel when I'm in the studio, I'm kind of into it. Not like, oh, I didn't have practiced for a week. So you have to have a very open mind when you're going into these things, because I don't know quite where it's going to come out. And you spend 3 days on one section of a track, and then on fourth day you abandon the whole thing. I love that. You're killing your babies all the time. That's the way it is.
Sure.
I'm always looking to see if I can make something that doesn't really sound like anybody, that somehow seems to sound like whatever I think I should sound like. I mean, you are playing for yourself first and foremost. I have to like it. I don't really care about playing for other people. I'm trying to knock myself out all the time and wait until it gets to that stage where I feel, you kind of know, you feel it in your body.
Well, I think other people feel that too. And like, I mean, if you're excited about it, that excitement translates.
I think it's the only criteria, really. This may sound weird, but I think that was really true in the Police. I think we never really deviated from what we ourselves liked. Going back to the pop group, as it were.
Yeah, well, that's the nature. I mean, people wonder about how you develop a voice on an instrument, but I mean, it should be the easiest thing in the world. If you just stick with what you like and what appeals to you personally, that's going to be you, that's going to be you. It's when you start trying to figure out what other people like that you start sounding like other people.
No, really bad mistake. I mean, it's an odd way to think about it, but I think one of the ways that can guide you through the artistic life is what they call procedure by negation. So I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't sound like this, I don't sound like that. What am I left with? Only this. Okay, that's it for me, and I'm going to do it that way. I think that's the way I feel. There's a lot of music I just don't want to play or listen to. I mean, this record is very much the way I like to hear things. But you mentioned earlier, the trilogy. Now, it does seem to be a trilogy. Somewhere in an interview recently, I said trilogy, and everybody's picked up that word, like the trilogy. Like, I feel like a gravestone came up. I went, hang on, mate. Yes. So now I'm having to say, okay, it was the trilogy. So I have to, I feel, go a different way for the next however many albums I make. And weirdly enough, I picked up a Collins, what they call them, guitar. This one, it's not an acoustic steel string. It's F-shaped, F holes,
An arch top?
Arch top, yeah, an acoustic arch top that Collins made. And I found it very inspiring, and it sort of got me into a whole other way of thinking. Because normally I sit around and, I usually play, if I'm at home, just to keep the hands moving, as one should. I just sit and play Fender Strat. There's not a lot of sound, but, you're doing your stuff. I found it very refreshing to pick up this Collins arch top and play on it, because it's got a very nice sound. It's not that big acoustic steel string, but it's got another thing. It's quite inspiring. So I may use, I was thinking this morning, I wonder if I could just do this on every track. It's got this sound as the dominant sound. So it's a very, intentional kind of thing that you would go for. But it would give, say you did 12 tracks, it would have a definite character that was, produced by playing a guitar like that.
Sure. Well, if nothing else, it could serve as a jumping off point, and then there's endless possibilities. I mean, you were talking about inspiring sounds, and I was going to ask you about something like on Aeromancer. There's a bouncing filter kind of sound at the beginning. I was wondering what that was, and these skittering sounds that come in after the main theme. They're two kind of really interesting.
Is Aeromancer the one with the big melodic section thing? God, I can't see the damn album. Where do I do with it? Sorry, I'm looking around, see if I can see this. You can't remember all the names of the song. I do that. It probably came out of, again, kind of messing around with pedals and finding it and thinking that could fit in here. You know, sometimes they produce the first elements of you know, a track or piece of music. Sometimes they're additional things, like, you know, say I put 3 or 4 tracks down and I think, okay, it's going on, but it needs a highlight or something, and then, you know, so I'll search around until I find the right bit of weirdness that works. You know, that's how it goes.
Rather than go through individual tracks and pedal, when we talked for Metal Dog, you said you had found some interesting pedals at that point. So, what were some new ones that you were enjoying for this record? And
Yeah. Um, well, you know, I've got a variety. The way I do, yeah, this is physical as well. I sit on a couch. You know, we got the desk there, and I sit on the couch opposite the couch, and the speakers are there because I mostly play through amp modeling now because it's so amazing using a fractal. And I have a table with all these pedals on it, like the current set, and I move them around. You know, replug, replug, replug. No, that's not working. This is working. You know, so boy, I could send you a list of those. I can't remember off the top of my head what I
sure,
use.
that would be
They're
great.
all still sitting on the table. I mean, the latest one I've got is the which really to put to use is the guy in Germany. What's his name? All handmade, beautiful pedals. You put my name on it, Wonder Child or something.
What does it do?
Everything, basically. So it's kind of incredible. All kinds of fuzz, and then you can put some. You can sort of do like a reverse fuzz, and it's very strange, but it's pretty amazing pedal. I mean, he's obviously master of electronics. Yeah, I can't think of the name of the company. He's in there. I think it's like David Torn uses his stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know the feeling. I mean, I can't remember what I had for lunch.
All the pedals I
So
got. I mean, you know, obviously I've got all the. You know, what I look for in a pedal now is, you know, anything that's really weird, basically. And the pedal makers have slowly started to cotton onto that. Very slow, late in the day. You know, only in the last few years, really. You know, always a chorus, fuzz, sustain. You know, the usual reverb. All these little pedals. I got a million of this shit. What's weird, you know, and now I've noticed that there's more guys kind of getting hip to the, you know, making really weird sounds, you know.
it
And
it it's true.
it's pretty good. Yeah, but that was, you know, we're talking like 25 years later, they started waking up to it. You know, and I've been trying to, you know, abusing the equipment and making it do all the things it shouldn't do for as long as I can remember. And, you know, now they've kind of got on the program, and it's getting much better.
Oh yeah, Metal Dog. You were talking about the Vox Flores you were using back
Yes.
then,
Oh
and
yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Red Panda stuff,
Yeah, I know that stuff. Yeah.
Dancer and Earthquaker is making some
Yeah.
interesting takes on classic pedals. That there'll be a reverb, but it's like the afterneath will do stuff that other reverbs don't, or things like that. Just create a unique sound. Um, on City of Crocodiles, there's something at the beginning that sounds like an auto harp, or maybe a comb filter. And it reappears in the song, but it's really interesting. Sounds like a strum, but the
Yeah.
frequency of it is really
City
interesting.
Crocodiles. That's one we just made a video for. It was fun to do. I've just been listening to it a lot. I mean, I do actually have an auto harp. It may well be that
Yeah,
yeah, it probably was. If it's what it sounds like, it's almost certainly what went on. It's right by all my guitars in the studio. Yeah.
they're fun to tune.
I think actually now that you're clearing my memory, I think we got it out to do something, and we had to, you know, tune it up to the piano. Yeah, yeah, we did do that. Now come to think of it, you know,
um,
I like got all the guitars, obviously, and, but I like to have a collection of fairly weird instruments that you can get one thing out of. I've got this weird Indian thing that does some very strange. I mean, you can't use it too much because it's so strange. But just these textures you can get out of some weird instrument. And the place I go to for that is usually McCabe's in LA, which is really a sort of acoustic place, but they get these weird instruments in that you can, well, I could use that somewhere. So, yeah.
Well, in the chronesthesia
Yeah.
tune, the video, you're playing the Ed O'Brien Strat. Did you use that on any in the recording with the sustainer in the neck?
What am I using? It's a
Wh-
Strat.
Yeah, it's a Strat. It's the Ed O'Brien from Radiohead. It's his signature Strat. It has a sustainer in the neck and
Yes.
Seymour
Yeah.
Duncan
Yeah.
humbucker in the.
No, I didn't think it. I think I used that guitar. It's not what I used
Uh,
on the solo. The solo was done probably on an old Strat. My Fender mate gave it to me in the reunion tour. It's a remake of my '63 red Strat. I wanted that for the white. It's a white guitar, right?
right. Yeah.
Yes, I remember. It was just purely for the video. I remember like trying it and didn't think it was very good. It didn't sort of do what it purported to do. So no, I didn't actually. I probably played through my rack, and I would have probably used what's the famous one I use always. I've got of course, a small pedal board at the moment. Yeah,
But but that was just for visuals. Yeah,
it was purely for that.
what guitar? So you say you use the reissue red Strat that Fender did. What did you use other guitars for other tunes?
It's weird. I've got this, I've got the new signature guitar, which you're probably familiar with all the photographs on it. I'll show it to you if you like.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. It's iconic.
Okay. This one.
Oh, the
Yeah.
monochrome.
Yeah. I'm very proud of that.
That's so
It
gorgeous.
came out well. And that was a whole trip making that with Fender. It's a great guitar to play. This is what I actually have this sitting here and I practice on it all the time.
So how did they get those photographs to stick? And
well, it's very difficult actually, challenging for them, but that was the idea that got them to do it. When I said I'd like to do this idea of a photo collage, and whoever was the head of the company said, "Oh, we've never done that. Okay, we'll do it." Just like that, because they hadn't done it. And so we went to work. This all took about 4 years to pull off, by the way. Of course, I have all the photographs. So they had an art designer. And what was amazing to me was I said, here are all the photographs. Let's collage them onto and he had some sort of guitar-shaped program that he could do it to. And he did it fairly quickly. So we got the collage, the look of it, and really nice picture of a diver I put on top of the headstock. So I shot in Beijing, China. You see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it pays it off really nicely.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then, the difficulty, of course, was actually getting all these photographs to stick. So we made the collage. He laid it out in some program which they could project onto the body, but then they had to get, find a way to get the hard surface so they didn't get all knocked off, although I wouldn't have minded if they had actually. And, we put Leica camera knobs here.
Could you show them?
Leica. They did all
you show the knobs? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So those are Leica camera knobs.
Yeah.
And, 3 springs in the back, of course. And then it's got all these photographs. I wanted a thinner red stripe. They couldn't quite pull that off at the maple neck. Yeah, it's a great guitar.
So those are the actual photographs on there. They had to somehow lacquer over them without destroying.
They had to lacquer. It was really difficult, and they had a few attempts at it. And the name is Dennis Galushka. I worked with at Fender. He said they took him several efforts to come up with a technique to do it. And he thought as he went along, he got better and better at making the guitars. So I said, oh, well, I'll take a later serial number in that case, because they gave some rather than number one, because by number 30, they were getting really good at it. You know, he said he got much better with his technique. Yeah.
So you gave him multiple prints of each photo, and
Yeah.
those are
Some, I
actual
can't
photos.
remember exactly. It was yeah, because I have a big photographic archive, and I went through them. I mean, it's just the one opportunity in life to, well, put your kids on a guitar, and family and all that. So, as well as sort of arty, weird photographs from Japan and China and places like that. My kids are all on the guitar somewhere. So
Perfect.
one thing I can leave behind.
Yeah, it beats a family album. That's
Yeah, yeah,
a family album you can play. That's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that was cool.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've the connection between photography and music. I mean, the more I watch photography videos on YouTube,
Yeah,
it's all the same thing of people who are obsessed with gear, but
I
maybe
know.
aren't great photographers.
Yeah,
And the people who are, who say it doesn't matter if you can shoot, I mean, if you have the eye and
yeah,
you can shoot, it's just on so many
absolutely.
levels. It's the same.
Yeah, it's a pet grievance and a classic that we've all gone through life with. That people are just like total geeks about the gear, not the art. They're not. It's always, photography is not about the camera. It's about the mind and the eye and a sense of a visual sense that you build, through whatever ways you can. Same in music. It's not about pedals and amps. It's really about what's your sense of music. What's music to you? Is it a fuzz box, or is it where's the inspiration? Yeah, absolutely. And it's yeah, this one just goes on forever. All these magazines are devoted to gear and equipment and all that, and people trying to sell you shit. No one talks about the aesthetics of music and art. But I think photography and music is a very nice combo, actually.
It is, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm discovering more and more musicians who cross over.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, I was going to ask you. Ralph. I'm sure you're aware. Ralph occasionally plays live or has
Yeah.
played live as his exhibitions. If things settle down and you have another exhibition, is that something you'd ever consider doing?
Yeah. Well, my
At least
current,
an opening.
absolutely. Well, Ralph and I did a concert together, not this summer gone, was it the summer before? In Long Island. We played it. There was a guild hall in Sag Harbor, I believe. Guitar weekend. So Ralph and I were on the Friday night, I think. So we both played. And that show that I did there is my current, on stage effort. It's, I guess you'd call it, I have a huge screen on stage, cinema size. I have all my gear. It's just me on stage. Multimedia, I suppose, is the word. And, we project these various sequences, all carefully worked out of my photography. And I play to them, sometimes just solo guitar, sometimes with backing tracks. So it's a variety. I've got about 8 or 9 pieces in the show, and it's all worked out because it's, I have all these incredible sounds that I make with guitar effects, particularly the Eventide. The old Eventide is fantastic. It almost is the whole show, the sounds that I get out of the Eventide. Then I do some solo guitar stuff, and I end it with a kind of a very fast-paced collage of black and white photographs of the Police that I shot touring in America in the early 80s with, as I play, Message in a Bottle. It goes down a storm. So I have a lot of shows booked for next year, all over Europe. So right now, of course, we can barely go anywhere. So I'm not
Sure.
doing it at the moment, but that's what I'm doing. Not in a band. I've got this show.
So are the pieces composed or improvised? I mean, are they
A lot of
composed
it's
for each stage?
improvised. What's composed is the sequence of photography. I think, the first thing I do, I come on stage, I've got these very strange pictures of plants that I shot. They're very surreal and like alien, almost from another planet. And I do this really weird sort of improv, it sort of like pins the audience to their seat. And they're like, oh, I know. Okay, if you can handle that, we can move on. And then it gets a bit more friendly. And then I think the first thing I do is a lot of photographs from China, where I've been everywhere. And I show this whole sequence and I'm playing this thing. So it's all improvised. They're not like set pieces. Well, there's a couple that I actually do play a set melody, but most of it is just improvised. And the inspiration for the improv comes from the way I set the pedals up. So it's like each song would be these three pedals, these three, then you go back to that setting. And I've worked all this out perfectly. When I first did the show, I was like, oh, I was just guessing at it, and that didn't work. I mean, it was difficult for me. So eventually I sorted it like exactly like this. So what the show is almost like a set of 10 pedal settings. That's how I do it. And it really works because the sounds are so beautiful and they're out through a big PA system. I did it at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, actually. That was a big sellout. That was good. I was
Are you
very
using
pleased
the
about that.
H9, the Eventide H9, or are you using a rack, one of the rack units?
Rack, the old rack unit. Amazing. Never been beaten. It's got, I mean, you can do anything on it. I mean, it's got 400 amazing sounds just from the start. We might tweak them a bit, but it's really the key to the whole thing. It's marvelous. Stereo, huge, and you can put chorus in, not chorus. And sometimes I might add in like a drone. I'll have a drone going underneath it. So, it immediately sets a very sort of atmospheric thing, kind of moody. There's a couple of pieces. I haven't been able to do it for a while because of, we're
Sure.
going to have to get back to it and reset the whole thing up. The way I do it is I project in my studio, I project the whole show on a white wall and I stand there and I practice to the pictures. Yeah, until I feel like I'm really down with the whole thing. And I'm finding like, apart from the sounds that are coming through the various effects pedals, what key I want to play and where I want to go through it. Some of them are completely open and free, nothing is set. But I started to learn after a while, this is going to sound really good around D minor, C sharp minor, and that's where I'm going to be with this. I kind of made a mental map of it as well, because this is different. And I mean, it's only me on stage, there's nothing else. But it works out really well because it's that combination of, you're in a big PA system, these amazing sounds that you can get now from the guitar, and quite strange, very exotic imagery. People are like, "Oh my God!" Then I step forward and say hello, and they all leave.
It sounds amazing, and I hope someday to be able to see it. It would be great.
Yeah, it's pretty unique.
Yeah.
I mean, we worked quite hard to get it to that point, and there were a few mistakes in the beginning, but I think we've kind of got the beast now, we've got it under control. Actually, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think I've got gigs in May and June, maybe July. And then there's a big run starting in early October. That, the technology may have gotten more improved and I can, cut down the amount of equipment it takes. Because it does take some gear, to do this.
Have you ever considered, I mean, using a laptop? I mean, since you're using modeling.
I might try that. I think we've got enough time before it gets official again that we could actually try and set that up. I've got a very tech-minded assistant who's very good with all this, and we might actually be able to do it, which of course would be brilliant, because it's quite expensive to ship all this stuff to Europe and carry it around and all that. And I mean, every show you do, you're sort of praying, please let it work. There's so many cables, just one out, and you're like, oh my God, It's so you're kind of hanging by a thread, but we haven't had any problems so far. But simpler would be better. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I know Adrian Belew has,
Yeah.
went over to laptop for a lot of stuff, and I don't know if you're familiar with Ivan Arset. He's a Norwegian guitar player, and he
Mm.
gets a lot of his ambient sounds through the laptop. He uses pedals as well. It's a combination.
Yeah, I think that's probably where we're headed. And as we've got probably almost a year away, well, maybe 7 or 8 months, we probably do something about that. I mean, I did a concert with Adrian in the Netherlands, and I know I did kind of rather jealously see that he had sort of gone there like, damn. But he's very good with all that stuff. Yeah.
It's funny because he was going back to pedals for he had a big tour with Jerry Harrison in this band to do the Remain in the Light music, and he was going back to pedals for that, to go back to the kind of sounds he was getting
Really?
with Talking Heads. Yeah, but but even pedals these days
Mm,
have become so much more compact, and
mm.
there's mini pedals, and you can
Yeah.
do a a switching system, and it can get pretty solid, so you can carry a smaller amount of
Yeah, it has. It's all gotten so much better. But one thing, I mean, comment on that technically is that I don't know if anything has yet beaten the Eventide harmonizer. That is the key, box for me. That's where I get all my sounds from that are so, otherworldly.
yeah.
I haven't seen that in a little pedal rack yet, so I don't see ever losing that particularly. Um,
I know they make
but
plugins for for Eventide makes plug-in versions of a lot of their stuff
yeah,
for
well, I'm
laptop,
going to
but
have
I don't
to,
know if it's the equivalent. Yeah.
well, you're just doing yourself a favor by paying a bit of attention to all this, because when you get to, okay, we've got a flight, how much is it going to cost? And then we've got to get cart it around. The realities of it, I don't really want to be bothered with them, but I feel that I have to pay attention, because at the end, if it's just you standing on the stage and you're looking down at the floor in semi-darkness, trying to hit the right button at the right time, you want all this to really work. And we did get it all working, but it's slightly nerve-wracking. So you need a lot of assurance, uh, unless it's, of course, like a band like the Police, and you're going out and there's just so much attention being paid to every breath you take. Not to make a joke, but of course, that was a different take. Now that just to mention while we're on about this kind of stuff, I was on stage with those other two blokes, whoever they were, and I didn't even have a lead. It was all radio. And so I had the pedal board with all the fantastic sounds on it, but it was all operated by my assistant over on the side of the stage. I didn't even have to hit the pedal board.
Yeah.
I want to go to the guitar solo, boom, in, switch it on. So I just walk out in the middle of the stage and, show off, no lead, just like there it is. That's another level.
Yeah, that's the big time, and you certainly experienced it. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time
Yeah.
for this. It's great talking to you,
Thank you. Yeah.
and
You too.
yeah, say when you do get out there, safe travels. It seems to
Yeah.
be
Thanks.
doing better over in Europe, and I
Yeah. Well, I think America, US, if there is one, will be at the end of all that. Yeah. Hopefully.
well, that would be terrific.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna turn off the
All
recording.
right, man. I'll see you later.
All right, take care.
Ciao. Take care.